son for months he's been saying that, you'd be correct. It was a commitment that was widely applauded, for good reason, including by me. And last night, Joe Biden reversed course on that commitment. And if you're wondering whether that is good politics, if you're wondering if this is great for his legacy as someone who has consistently stood for principle over personal needs, who even kept the guy on in Delaware who was appointed by Trump, who was going to keep investigating his son, it's not good politics. And yes, Hunter Biden has done some stupid things. And yes, Hunter Biden has done some illegal things. He should not have lied about his drug use when filling out paperwork to register for a handgun. We all knew about his recovery from an addiction. He wrote an entire book about it. And of course, he should have paid his taxes in full and on time, as everyone should. My bet is Joe Biden knows that too. But he made his decision not as a politician. He made it as a dad. And by the way, his son is a private citizen. He's not a threat to our intelligence gathering, to our national intelligence, or to our law enforcement institutions. Joe Biden is going to be a private citizen in 50 days, too. So tonight and moving forward, we're going to spend most of our time talking about the people who are and who may be. People like Kash Patel, who Trump tapped this weekend to lead the FBI. Now, there are lots of problems with that choice. First of all, he's unqualified. He's a conspiracy theorist. And the thing Trump likes most about him is the very thing that should be most disqualifying. And that is his blind allegiance to one man. As The Atlantic described it, even in an administration full of loyalists, Patel was exceptional in his devotion to Donald Trump. Now, to be clear, the reason that loyalty or that excessive loyalty is so concerning is that the FBI is supposed to be an independent, nonpartisan law enforcement agency responsible for investigating crimes without bias or political influence. That's part of the reason there are 10-year terms. But Kash Patel has made clear he intends to do the opposite on Trump's behalf.
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
See, Kash Patel is a bit of a deep state conspiracy theorist, clearly with an axe to grind. In a book he released last year, Patel literally listed the people he says are a part of the executive branch deep state, in his words. People he called corrupt actors of the first order. The list included Biden and Obama officials, but also former members of the Trump administration, including former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, former Mark Meadows aide Cassidy Hutchinson, and even FBI Director Christopher Wray. Yes, the man who still has 3 more years in his term, who Patel is hoping to replace. Think about that for a second. The guy Donald Trump picked to lead the FBI is someone who talks repeatedly about going after the deep state. And he literally has a list. Now, that on its own should send a bit of a chill up the spine of every person who cares about the rule of law in this country. Today, we also learned a whole lot more about Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense. Former Fox News host Pete Hegseth. The New Yorker's Jane Mayer released a jaw-dropping piece this morning about Hegseth, and I just want to read you a few paragraphs because it really captures it. Now, as I'm reading this, I want you to really hold in your mind that the person I'm talking about and Jane Mayer is describing in this piece is Donald Trump's choice to lead the Department of Defense. So here we go. Quote, a previously undisclosed whistleblower report on Hegseth's tenure as the president of Concerned Veterans for America from 2013 until 2016 describes him as being repeatedly intoxicated while acting in his official capacity, to the point of needing to be carried out of the organization's events. The detailed 7-page report, which was compiled by multiple former CVA employees and sent to the organization's senior management in February of 2015, states that at one point, Hegseth had to be restrained while drunk from joining the dancers on the stage of a Louisiana strip club where he had brought his team. The report also says that Hegseth, who was married at the time, and other members of his management team sexually pursued the organization's female staffers, whom they've divided into 2 groups, the party girls and the not party girls. In addition, the report asserts that under Hegseth's leadership, the organization became a hostile workplace that ignored serious accusations of impropriety, including an allegation made by a female employee that another employee on Hegseth's staff had attempted to sexually assault her at the Louisiana strip club. In a separate letter of complaint, which was sent to the organization in late 2015, a different former employee described Hegseth being at a bar in the early morning hours of May 29th, 2015, while at an official tour through Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, drunkenly chanting, "Kill all Muslims, kill all Muslims." Again, that is the guy that Donald Trump wants in the nuclear chain of command. But wait, there's more in this story. According to Jane Mayer's reporting, Hegseth wasn't exactly a star manager. As the head of the nonprofit group Veterans for Freedom, he racked up $430,000 in unpaid bills, in addition to as much as $75,000 in credit card debts. As one strategist who worked for the group at the time emphasized, the VFF was an exceedingly small organization with fewer than 10 employees and a budget of between $5 million and $10 million. The strategist went on to say, quote, "Hegseth couldn't do that properly. I don't know how he's going to run an organization with an $857 billion budget and 3 million individuals. I don't know either." Now, Hegseth's next stop, leading the nonprofit Concerned Veterans for America, didn't go much better. In an email, one of the whistleblowers that contributed to a report on Hegseth stated that he treated the organization funds like they were a personal expense account for partying, drinking, and using CVA events as little more than opportunities to hook up with women on the road. So set aside the 2017 rape allegation that Hegseth denies. Set aside the fact that his mother at one point accused him of abusing women for years. Set aside his alarming take on the Geneva Conventions. Even set aside the stories about him being drunk and trying to get on stage with strippers. Set all that aside. And what you're left with is a guy who couldn't even run a small nonprofit. Look, I don't want to sit here every week and tell you everything is a five-alarm fire, because some things aren't. And not everything will be, and I'm never going to tell you everything is. But I've worked in the White House, in the national security space for years. I know firsthand how important these jobs are. They're not political jobs either. And if Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth actually get confirmed or somehow find themselves in these jobs, five-alarm fire might be a bit of an understatement. Starting us off tonight are two people who have unique insight into the confirmation process, the importance of FBI background checks. Greg Nunziata is a former counsel to Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Noah Bookbinder is a former counsel to Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee. During their time in those roles, they oversaw hundreds of nominations. They just wrote an excellent joint op-ed in the New York Times about the importance of FBI background checks in the process, and they both join me now. So I've been talking a lot about the importance of FBI background checks, and I really want to dive into it with you. I wanted to first start by asking you about the confirmation process. I just really read extensively from, and there's a lot more, from a Jane Mayer publicly reported piece on Pete Hegseth. You're both used to dealing with background checks where the information is not publicly available yet, a lot of it. What do you do, Greg, if you're the Armed Services Committee with a report like that?
Well, that's generally the case, that most of these background check processes are totally confidential and they're handled with discretion and very professionally. Noah and I had a great relationship doing this with hundreds of nominations. Occasionally, there's public information out there on nominees. And I think if you're the committee, you're the senators and the staff on that committee, you have to take all those public allegations seriously as part of your review, along with whatever is in an FBI file. So it's something that needs to be followed up. Certainly, these are the kinds of allegations that, if true and if substantiated, are of a kind that would doom a nomination in the ordinary course.
So let me ask you, Noah, because one of the things that struck me is that there's been expression of concerns about some nominees. And as I noted, as I just said, not everything is a five-alarm fire. There are some people, in my view, who are. But I've noted a number of Democrats have kind of held back in stating their concern about some of these nominees. Do you think that's because they think the process needs to be followed through all the way through a confirmation hearing? Is that what needs to happen? Or are there nominees like Matt Gaetz who maybe should be stopped before that?
I mean, I think that the general way that things have happened in the past, and the Senate is a place even now that is a place of traditions and processes, is you have a process. And so you wait and see what the FBI finds. The committee will often do its own follow-up investigation. Senators will consider all of that. They will ask questions at a hearing. Then they'll make a decision. That's kind of the way it's supposed to go. And also, one of the reasons for this FBI background process is, frankly, so that you can withdraw a nomination that never should go across the starting line because the problems are too large. So you really ideally would never be in this situation. I do think that there are some nominees where there is so much publicly available problematic information that it may be appropriate for senators to get a little bit ahead of this and say, this doesn't seem like an appropriate nominee. Maybe it should never come to a hearing. But generally, this instinct to say, hey, we have a process, let it take its course, is one that has served the country pretty well.
There's a lot of tests that I think Trump and his world have put on the system. I think it's safe to say, and you said recently, Greg, that Trump is deliberately testing the Senate's capacity and willingness to play its constitutional role as a check on the president. I mean, he just announced his plans to nominate Kash Patel to run the FBI. Of course, the current FBI director has 3 more years. But tell me more about what you mean by that? And is Kash Patel an example of that?
Yeah, well, look, I think that the nominations process, the Senate's role of advice and consent, is really one of those core checks and balances in our system, designed by the founders very deliberately. They didn't want to have a king. They were worried about the president's power to appoint people. He should be able to get a team that agrees with him and supports his policy agenda, but he should not be entitled to, and the Senate should not allow him to have unqualified cronies whose highest loyalty is to him, not the law. That's exactly what the founders designed this process for. So I think this is, even before the president's in office, he is making some nominations that, at least on the face of it, seem like there are people who might prioritize loyalty